Good evening. Welcome to Earth the Other Side. My name's John. I'm your host, and tonight I'm speaking with Krishnan, who is a 5-time award-winning author and a 3-time medical miracle, 2-time near-death experiencer, and his latest NDE back in 2013 placed him in a Glasgow 3 coma, which is where he remained fully conscious in a celestial dimension he now calls the portal. He awoke from a coma 9 days later on his birthday and had no memory of his name, his partner of 11 years, or of his 20-year-old son. Krishnan, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Your most recent NDE was in 2013? Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
So when was the first one?
Most recent. So you know both of them, huh? You've done your homework. So technically, my first one was the moment I was born. I was a nuchal baby. They call it a blue baby. Nuchal baby is when you're born with your umbilical cord around your neck. And so basically I was born dead and they cut it off and they brought me back to life. So my first NDE was actually when I was born. And I did not know anything about NDE until 2014, until 2006, 15, 16. So I didn't even know about this term. And so, but as I look back, when I started to study NDE and became a scholar of it and became something of an expert, as I have over the several years, I learned that, oh my God, this makes a lot of sense. Like I had all these symptoms, all these after effects since I was born. A lot of the things that are just kind of standard NDE experience, I was having them when I was very young.
Yeah. Usually that sort of like opens a whole other channel.
Precisely. And yes, I had a very bizarre awareness when I was 2-3 years old. I was already wondering like, what's this all mean? What's going on? It was very philosophical for a young toddler, you know, and I was also having past life regression. I didn't know who I was. They kept calling me this kid Scott. And I was like, who's this guy Scott? I don't know who you are, but you're not my parents. I don't know who my parents are, but you're not my parents. I don't know what this is or where I'm at, but I know I don't belong here. And so that's a very common past life regression feeling, is that people very rarely will remember where they are from, but they know they're not from this time and place. And it was pervasive. I mean, and I learned as a toddler to shut up about it, because I realized, I'm like, oh my God, people think I'm crazy. And I was like, what do you mean crazy? You're 3 years old. What do you know about being crazy? What do you mean you'll get in trouble for being crazy? When you're 3 years old, how do you know any of this stuff? I was having these like dialogues with myself at 3 and 4 years old. It was insane.
Yeah.
And I just learned to be quiet about it. And I kind of adjusted to it. And then stabilizes around 7, which is standard for NDE. It takes about 7 years for it to really, truly stabilize. And so that was my first one.
So what do you mean by stabilize when it comes to near-death experiences?
The studies and scholars of the NDE experience, and I am one of them. I mean, I am a bona fide expert now because I've crammed information and knowledge on this for several years now. I've devoured it. And so very extreme NDE events and experiences can typically take 4 to 7 years to truly stabilize within your body again. Because for me, particularly, the moment of impact when I was killed, my spirit, my consciousness catapulted and left my body. It was like, okay, I'm out of here. I don't need to be here. This is terrifying. This is bad. I don't need an out-of-body experience and hover around and look at this. This is terrible. I'm gone. So I went to the other side. And that's where I was during the entire duration. Whatever was happening on Earth, didn't know, didn't care. And so when I came out of my coma, which we'll talk about the event because it's a very supernatural set of circumstances, which is people find it pretty bizarre and fascinating. When I came out of my coma, your soul is the energy pack of your body. And so it has to be within your body for your body to be animated. But your spirit is your energy body and your consciousness. And your consciousness is not confined to the material realm. Your soul is when it's in your body, and your body definitely is, and your energy body and all those things. But your consciousness, your chitta, as they say in Sanskrit, is not bound by the dimensional reality. And so my consciousness, whenever I would go to sleep and when I was in the coma, was in the other side, what I now call the portal. And when I was awake, it was here, but it was also kind of there too. So I was existing in 2 different dimensions at once. It was very hard and very confusing. I mean, it's kind of like, when you wake up and you had this really very lucid dream. And when you first wake up, you can't really tell the difference between the world you're in and the world you were just in, right? We all had that experience. Mm-hmm. So But imagine that didn't go on for a few moments, but it went on for 4 solid years. So I was kind of connected to this portal other side dimension the entire time. NDE wasn't a moment. It wasn't an event. It was an ongoing thing for 4 years intensely, and it kept on going. It still goes on to this day. I mean, I'm interacting with it all the time.
Mhm. Yeah, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. This is why I'm smirking. But let's go back to the actual NDE, the second NDE that you had in 2013, right?
Yes.
So take us back to that day. What happened? How did this?
So I'm in my office. I'm a private practice counselor. I quit construction several years before, did a 180 in my career, began as a hypnotherapist, became a life coach, became a counselor, became a specialist, and was successful in saving lives and was really loving the work. And I'm in my office, private practice, and I'm overlooking the park. And I had 3 clients call and reschedule that morning. They texted me. It happens, but not 3 in a row. It's never happened. Suddenly I got 4 hours to kill. Because I was booked back to back all day, I didn't bring any extra work. I mean, I'm a writer and I'm always writing books, and I was probably getting ready. I was writing 2 or 3 books at that time. And so, but that particular day, I didn't bring any backup work in the office. And I rode my motorcycle that day. I didn't always. Maybe once or twice a week, I'd ride my motorbike. It's a very unusual Piaggio MP3 500. 2 wheels in the front, rides like a motorcycle, it leans. It's very bizarre. Very popular in Europe, very, very rare here. So that particular day, again, I'm giving you these details. I rode my bike to work, and I didn't bring any backup work. And I had 3 clients call and reschedule, which had never happened before. I changed my clothes from my office clothes to some riding clothes that I had with me. That's important too, and I'll get to that in a moment, because what I put on. I left my office. Apparently, I called my girlfriend. I didn't know this because I didn't remember anything for months and months and months, which we'll get to. I called her and I said, hey, you want to go for a walk up the hill? I got clients to reschedule. I got some time. She goes, no, I can't make it. Why don't you go up to the clinic and get your physical like you were supposed to a little while ago? And I said, that sounds like a good idea. I've been in that office for 7 years, John. And when I exited the garage for the first time in those 7 years, I could feel the emotions coming. I turned right instead of left. Never in 7 years had I ever turned right out of my garage instead of left, because to the left was quiet side streets into town. The right was a big boulevard with traffic signals and a handful of cars. And it just didn't make any sense. To this day, I don't know why I chose to turn right instead of left, but I did. I'll never know why. I had some kind of reason, but I don't know. 7 years, the first time I ever did it. About quarter to half mile away from my office, I stopped at a light. I had a green left turn arrow just for me. I was the only guy in the left turn lane. And as I eased out to make my turn, a full-size SUV went through the light, hit me in the face, killing me dead. Mangled, bloody, on the street, on the pavement, dead instantly. On the corner is a tire shop. In front of the tire shop, a guy was on his cell phone and he saw the scene. And he dropped his phone and he ran over. He's a pastor. He felt that God had put him there for a reason that morning. His daughter had begged and pleaded with him and nagged him to come with her to the tire store, and he resisted all the morning until he finally caved in. So he felt there was some kind of fate involved here. He pulled me from the chassis of the car, and my body was burning. I had blood coming from my nose, my eyes, my mouth, and my ears, and I was dead. He began reading me my last rites. Excuse me. The emotions don't just come from what I went through, honestly. You'll notice as I talk that the emotions come when I talk about the fear and pain that it causes other people. That bothers me a lot. I feel guilty, you could say. He's reading my last rites. Trying to send my soul to heaven before it's too late. On the other corner is a Jack in the Box restaurant. We're talking 60 yards, right on the same intersection. At the front of the drive-through line are 2 paramedics getting lunch. Had they wanted tacos instead of burgers that day, I wouldn't be here. Had they been in the back of that line, behind a soccer mom or behind any other car, I wouldn't be here. They saw the scene. They saw the accident happen as it occurred. Well, on the scene in seconds, reviving me, bring my body back to life. Notice I said bring my body back to life. My spirit, my consciousness was gone. I immediately, again, no OB, out of body experience, didn't hover around, didn't give it, like, I'm out of here. This is not good. The paramedics revived my body and I stayed on the other side. And it was cool. Like, I didn't want to be down there. Where I was fine. I was in a stage 3 Glasgow coma. Now, as I mentioned to you, I changed before I left the office as I got on my motorbike to put on some riding clothes. They sheared the shirt off of me. I have it in the other room. I should have brought it. The shirt that I happened to bring that day, I have dozens of t-shirts from around the world. Stonehenge, legendary concerts I've been to. I've been very busy all my life. You can see the Grateful Dead stuff behind me. Been to a lot of Dead shows. Got lots of, I get the t-shirt when I go places because it's something that I can wear and remember them. But that particular day, the shirt that I happened to grab was from the Museum of Death. I still have it. It's in the other room. It's sheared. Actually, I just shipped it to a friend of mine in Ohio, my editor, actually. She offered to sew it together like Frankenstein. She said, look, I'm a seamstress. I told her about this idea. She said, let me sew it up for you like Frankenstein's monster. You can wear it again. So the Museum of Death t-shirt that I was wearing has a cartoon character of this freaked out dead cat. It's really funny looking. That's what I was wearing that day. I'm in a stage 3 Glasgow coma. If you know anything about EMT work, that is synonymous with death. Literally, when EMTs realize you're in a stage 3 Glasgow, they shrug their shoulders and say it's up to God. There's nothing they can do. My son, who is now an EMT and a firefighter, called me about a year ago when he first got his EMT, when he was studying nonstop with it. Called me one day. Oh my God, Dad, you were in a stage 3. And I said, yeah, I told you that. He goes, yeah, but I just wondered what it was. Holy shit. So again, this is a very serious condition. I was taken to ICU. I'm in a coma. Oh, there's one more. My phone and everything was jettisoned from the crash and no way to contact anybody that I knew. No one knew who I was. I didn't have much on my bike with me. On the other corners, on the corner behind the Jack in the Box of the DMV, there was a guy there, one of my son's best friends, who has no business being in that area, doesn't even live in that neighborhood, and had a rare errand to run in that particular DMV that morning at that time. And he was there and saw the accident, called my son. There's the emotions again. And he said, Brandon, your dad's been in an accident. He goes, how do you know it's my dad? What are you talking about? He says, it's his bike. No one has a bike like that. And again, I have a very unusual motorcycle. And that's how my family was alerted to me being in the hospital. When they showed up at the ICU, they were met by 2 doctors and a priest. Not a good sign. And they said, if he ever wakes up, which by the way, he won't, they didn't want to get their hopes up. No one has ever woke up from this. One person in the 1980s woke up from this. No one else has. If he ever wakes up, he'll be brain damaged, probably a vegetable, and will be maimed for life, and will not be able to take care of himself. And those scars and lacerations you see on his face, even with extensive plastic surgery, he will never look normal. Not only did I recover from that, I woke 9 days later. As a numerologist, I can tell you 9 days is very significant. 9 days later, I woke on my birthday. What we've got here is a pastor on one corner, a paramedic on the other corner, my son's best friend at the DMV behind it, wearing my Museum of Death t-shirt, turned right, said left for the first time in 7 years. By the way, if I heard this, I'd say this guy's full of shit. He's a great fiction teller, but I can't believe any of this. It's all documented. I've got the records for it. Woke up on my birthday in the hospital and my skin was completely clear. Not a scratch was on me. Not one scar, not even abrasion. I've always had fair, not that great a complexion. I had the best complexion I ever had in my life. When I woke up from that coma, it was great. When I woke up from the coma, I did not know who I was. I didn't know my name. Did not know who my girlfriend was of 11 years. Didn't know who my son was. Didn't even know what a son was. It was like my identity had been deleted. Did not know how to walk, did not know how to talk. And I'm not just saying that I was damaged from the accident. I'm saying literally everything that I knew, like when you're born, was deleted. Look, if you believe in reincarnation, I mean, it's a fact of life. So we've all been here before. We all continue on. So we've all walked before each lifetime. Yet when we're born, we forget because our identity is deleted and we have to start over. That's the kind of experience I was having. My identity was completely deleted. I don't know who I was. I had no past. I had no history. It wasn't amnesia. It's like I never existed before. The only thing that I could recall when, for example, the hospital administrators came into the room and said, do you know who this is? And I was really irritated. They were being very condescending. I don't know why, but I had that part of me still. I was like, geez, don't talk to me like I'm an idiot. And I didn't have any idea who they were, and I couldn't speak. And I said, sure, she's the queen, in some kind of mumbled fashion. I didn't know who my girlfriend was. The reason I said she's the queen, and I now know, because I've learned over the time as my memory's been restored, that what's happening to me is that the lines between my identities, between past lives and this one, were blurred. I was experiencing many of them simultaneously. So I didn't know. And the first thing I said to them, to my son and this girl who was my girlfriend, first thing I said to them was, why are you in London? And I didn't think I was in London, John. I was in London. I didn't know how they got there so fast. I didn't even know why they were there. Because now I know, because my very last life, I was in London. So I didn't know why. I thought I was in London because that's the identity that I knew. So my identities were blurred. I could not identify the lifetime I was in at the moment. It was too confusing for me, existing in multiple dimensions at once. So that's the death day, up to 9 days and waking up on my birthday and not knowing who I was and what I was. And again, there's the medical clinical part, which is the brain trauma that I experienced is called a DAI, diffuse axonal injury. We all hear about TBI, traumatic brain injury. It's in the news all the time. DAI is the most severe version of a TBI known to science. 90% of people with a DAI never wake up. 90% of the 10% that do, they are dead or institutionalized. They're institutionalized or dead by suicide within 4 years. They cannot take care of themselves. They're not functioning. They either lose their minds completely or they just don't recover. I am a 3-time medical miracle. I'm the only one to come out of a stage 3 for a long, long time. I'm the only one to recover from a DAI. I also had spinal fusion and several other things as well. I have my quirks. My left leg doesn't always obey when I want it to. Some balance issues. I'm not a 4 or 5 tennis player like I used to be. I have good ground strokes, but I have no footwork because I can't operate my legs as well. It's not, my legs are fine. My brain can't communicate all the time through my nerves. So I have some of those kind of leftover consequences. But as they told my family, if he ever wakes up, which he won't, he'll be brain dead and he'll be a vegetable. The chief of brain neurology at UCLA, because I was in LA at the time, called me in about 3 months after I got home from the hospital. He called me and asked me to come see him. And I thought, anything, somebody please help me. I was so damaged, so confused. And my girlfriend drove me to UCLA. I'm sitting in his office and he's interviewing me. He's asking me all these questions. He kept saying to me, when was your accident? Comes back, when was your accident? And I keep telling him, so why do you keep asking me that? And he says, because I'm looking at your fMRI. It's right in front of me. And I don't know how you're sitting up and talking to me right now. This is the chief of brain neurology at UCLA. And I said, look, man, I don't know. And I don't care. Just help me. I'm having a hard time. He says, can we study you? You're a bona fide miracle, man. We have no idea how you're doing what you're doing. I let them study me for 3 days. I came back in a week or 2 or month, I don't remember now, and let them study me. And I said, what'd you find out from the test? And he said, you're officially a medical miracle. We have no idea how you're doing what you're doing. And he said, can we study you some more and other things? And I said, look, man, no. I'm not here to save anybody else. I've got to get out of this. I'm struggling with my identity every day. I'm struggling to learn how to walk like an infant. I'm learning from scratch. I'm learning how to read. I'm learning how to speak. And so that was the early stages.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this, by the way. It's extraordinary. How do you explain, like, no lacerations, no brain?
I'm not a very religious, zealot-y kind of person. I'm very spiritual and always have been, long before my NDE. What you'll learn here, hopefully, when we talk, is I'm a master theologue. I'm a master mystic. Had been since I've been involved in mystical and spiritual practices all my life, since I was a child, since that first NDE. And so, but the bottom line is, as I've wrestled time and time again, I got to tell you, when I was going through this, people would say, even in the hospital, they hear my story, say, "Oh my God, you're so lucky." And I'm like, no, God damn it. Lucky is when you almost get in the face by a truck, not when you survive. It's not lucky. No, I didn't feel lucky. I was losing everything. I was having a very hard time. I wasn't in any pain. I never experienced any physical pain. Never. Don't remember it until my spinal fusion. That was crippling. That was devastating. That was almost worse than the TBI. It was so bad. Hung 14 hours. I hung upside down as they did spinal fusion surgery on me. I was unconscious. And I have also analyzed, asked, tried to reason why these collection of such obvious, undeniable supernatural events, paramedics on the court, all the things that I shared with you. And the conclusion eventually, and again, you understand, for the first 4 years, I didn't give a shit. All I wanted to do was get well and be back who I was. I didn't care. I wasn't brand new and born again like most NDEs. They wake up and they were not spiritual before, and now suddenly they are. I already was. And I was like, okay, I know why you died. You need to find God. I don't know why I died. I was already doing all this. I know why you died, but why me? And so over the following 7 and 9 years, my NDE and my medical things were an ongoing event. It wasn't a moment in time. And eventually, I concluded that celestial forces went way out of their way and got very creative and made it rather undeniable. I mean, you hear these things and you see these documented events, even an atheist got to be like, well, I got to give the God thing another thought. Again, if I wouldn't live it, and if I didn't have it documented, I would think it was fiction. I was losing everything. The girl I was with for 11 years, that was a casualty of this trauma. The two of us weren't able to, and we had a magical relationship. But as I wasn't present in a spiritual sense, because I was in both dimensions at one time, I was the glue that held us together. And without that, that was a casualty. My career was a casualty. So much of what I knew before was a casualty. And so when I first time I tried to write about it and document it, it was too painful. I just couldn't do it. I now know, as in the last 2 years, I finished this book. You could say I got a message. I was writing a totally different book. And the message was, stop writing this and write your death experience. And I said, okay. I don't question celestial directives. I just say, okay, all I do is try to look into how to do what I'm feeling I'm being directed to do. As an evocative writer, I like to joke and say I'm like a method writer. Method actors, you know what a method actor is?
Yeah.
They like they take on the role. That's how I am when I'm a writer. As a writer, I'm reliving these things viscerally, like intensely. And I don't want to relive this shit. It was very dark, very terrifying, very, very bad, very, very unpleasant. And I did this for this book and for the project of it to be able to share miracles with people and give them hope in their hours of darkness, in their darkest hours, give them evidence as I had seen some evidence. And I'll give you one. Soon after I was home from the hospital, my son was my physical therapist at home. He's a firefighter and he was doing a lot of PT and he was trained. And when he would leave, I do it when he wasn't home. So when he came around, I was like, get better at it. And he didn't know, he thought it was just him. I was cheating. And I remember watching TV one day, because if I wasn't doing PT, I mean, I pretty much had to lay down. I couldn't do much. And there was a show on, I think it was 60 Minutes or a news show. And there was a little documentary about a guy that was climbing Mount Everest, and he had no legs. From the Afghan war, he lost both of his legs, and he climbed Mount Everest. And that moment made me think to myself, shut up, you big whiny bitch. Don't you complain about a goddamn thing. Look at this man. Look what he's doing. Get off your ass and make this happen. And so if my suffering, which has a silver lining and is a beautiful story of miracles and evidence of divine intervention that's undeniable, inspires people and puts light in their hours of darkness, then it becomes worth it.
When you died the second time around, and you made the conscious decision, I'm out of here, and right, leaving behind whatever. But where did you go? Like, I mean, at that moment, did you just assimilate back into the universe, or did you go somewhere?
There is, again, I call it the portal, and that's just because it's non-denominational. You understand, for the first, again, 3-4 years, I had a hard time relating to and identifying with the world because I was in both dimensions. Spiritual world made total sense to me. Material world, I thought was kind of stupid and kind of confusing. And I was like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like really disjointed and it's all kind of messed up. And so I just called it the portal. The Tibetan Buddhists call it the bardo. And Western religions call it purgatory. It's the in-between state, in-between dimension, space, you could say, the Akash. And I called the portal, and I refer to it as the Akash. And so it's a spaceless, timeless, matterless dimension of just existence. And so, again, in Sanskrit, the term for consciousness is chitta. So when I was there was no body, there was no I, as in Scott or Krishnan. There was no identity that we identify with, because you're a conglomeration. You are a collection of all your identities, infinite, eternal identities. And so I'm experiencing almost all of them at once. And all I was pure, raw chitta consciousness. And so the individualities of existence are really trivial and meaningless to you when you're there. So again, it's hard to describe because there's no reference point, literally no reference point, but it is a spaceless, timeless dimension that you have no body. You're just pure, raw consciousness. You don't have an ego, an identity that gets in the way of your thinking apparatus, you could say. And what takes place there for most people, it varies by degree. And I like to say that I wasn't communicated with in a verbal manner. I didn't have dialogues necessarily, even though one of the chapters of the book is called Dialogue with the Other Side. I say in the beginning of the chapter, I'm going to present this to you as a dialogue, like Socratically, but the reality is it wasn't an actual verbal dialogue. It was uploaded to my consciousness. So what I perceived and was given there was uploaded to my mind. Now, that doesn't make me omniscient, because what you're uploaded, everyone is going to this in-between state. We all do. Most everyone reports it. Some people don't remember it, but everybody goes there between lives. And what I was uploaded, what we're all uploaded with, is basically what we're qualified to know, you could say. I don't mean qualified as in good or bad. I'm saying, like, I wasn't given trigonometry mathematics because I'm a bad mathematician. I'm not good at math. I was never good at math. So, but I was already a very trained and advanced mystic and spiritualist. So I was given a lot of insights and a lot of confirmations, you could say. I wasn't given new knowledge so much because I was already a theologian, a scholar, and a mystic. I was given confirmation, verification, that I was on the right path and I was studying in the right way and I was learning the eternal truths. And some things were added, some things were enhanced, some things were raised up to higher octaves. So I would often say that while I didn't necessarily learn new stuff with my visit there and my ongoing visits there, the eternal truths that exist within all of us were raised to higher octaves and higher awarenesses. I had more perception of them.
What would you say is the difference then from what you're describing and what NDEs describe as or call the void?
Well, I think the void is just, again, we all have our own convenient term for it. I mean, the void, the bardo, again, I use the portal because I didn't know, again, understand that for the first, especially 6 months and 2 years even of my NDE, I was confused all the time. I was already a very advanced student and scholar with a very strong education, writing, reading, and I had read volumes of books. But I was like a kid. I mean, I could barely read. I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. And so I just grabbed a word that made sense to me. It felt like a portal. Now, again, over time, I started to see how things were being produced for me and what the perceptions that I had. And so to each their own. What you experience in your NDE is particular to your view of reality and your own sense of attachments and self. So, for example, in this country, in a Western religion country, mostly Christian and Abrahamic religions, people will have spiritual experience, religious experiences that pertain to their faith. But do you think, does that make the NDE in India who's a Hindu any less valid than because he didn't see Jesus? And so your version, you could say, God is everything, God is everywhere, and God is anything that she wants to be at all times. And so God can put on whatever wardrobe, whatever appearance suits you to comfort you and make you feel connected to love and divine bliss. And so when I was there, and again, I'm going to air quote when I said I was asked, because there was not a dialogue, but I was asked, I said the same kind of thing. I was like, people in NDEs, they experience like white light and angels and all this kind of stuff and dead relatives, past on relatives and all that. I'm not saying any of that. And they said, do you need it? Do you need it? Do you want to? And I'm like, no, I get it. Like, I don't need any of that. I'd rather just rest and be here at peace. I'm not scared. I'm not terrified. I'm completely at ease with what's happening with me. And so I'm not confused. I feel completely safe and secure and like I'm where I'm supposed to be at the moment. So I didn't need anything that would help comfort me. Many people, not all, but again, it varies from person to person. The bottom line is the celestial agents, what I call Akashic agents, they can customize your NDE to be anything that's going to comfort and help you progress on your soul's journey. That's the important thing to know, that what you're experiencing in your NDE is particular to you because it's what helps you progress on your soul's journey. It's very customized and personalized. But ultimately, we're all getting the universal truth, which is simple. God is love. God doesn't have love. God is love. Pure, absolute, divine bliss love. I mean, that's something we can't perceive. We can't conceive. We can't conceptualize that. And everyone is having this universal experience of verification, validation that the spiritual exists. Even atheists that die and have these experiences, they come back and they're born again, And again, so the universal aspect, the consistent themes between all NDEs is they all experience absolute evidence that there is life beyond death, that there is a soul, that there is a divine presence. The version of that and the brand of that, you could say, varies from person to person, but the general aspect of it is identical for all of us. It's bliss and it's love, and it's comforting, and it's peace.
So, what are your thoughts then on reincarnation?
Reincarnation is a fact of life. It's not a belief system. Even the Western religions, Abraham, again, now I'm speaking to you as a theologue expert. I'm a religious expert. And again, I'm not trying to boast and brag. I want to assure you that I'm not just spouting off my own ideas. I'm a scholar and student, have been all my life. And so everything that I'm going to speak with you, I learned a long time ago not to be wrong about what I talk about. I just don't talk about things I'm wrong about. And so if I don't know it, I don't talk about it. And so even the Western Abrahamic religions, at one time, before they were distorted and changed and modified to fit certain religious agendas, they also talk about reincarnation. And they still do. If you read between the lines, it's all there. There's also, in all religions, another universal theme, which is there is an ultimate destination, which is, for the Buddhist, enlightenment, liberation. There is samadhi, there is God realization, there is heaven, golok, whatever term you want to use. There's versions of this for every religion because there's different levels of this. And so none of them are wrong. The only thing that's wrong is how they insist that theirs is the only one that's right, because they're all correct. And God, again, God isn't confined to one religion or one personality. God can be and is anything and everything all the time. And so the experience that people are having in their celestial experiences are just that. The Akashic agents, as I like to affectionately call them, and I refer to them regularly as, they're creative. They can present it to you any way that works for you, any way that's going to fit for you and make you feel comfortable.
You're familiar with astral projection, obviously?
Yes.
So, because people have asked me, oh, is it your soul leaving your body? And I've always been inclined to say no. It's your state, your awareness, your consciousness is what's leaving. I mean, the essence of you is leaving and having an experience. But I always thought that my soul still remained in my body,
Very intuitive
to me, you know what I mean? And I just wanted to confirm that, or wanted you to confirm, which I guess you just did, that it's not our soul. Our soul remains intact.
right.
Yeah.
And as when we look at the ancient original spiritual texts, such as the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Gita, the Bhagavatam, and that's just one collection, but all of them, again, all the Western ones come from those. And they all agree that the soul is the essence, as you just said. That's the perfect word for it. That's what I refer to it as too. It is the essence of what you are. And it is the animator of your body. Without your soul, your body cannot exist. Your soul is what motorizes your body. And so, yes, my consciousness was not there, but my soul was in my body in a hospital bed. It had to be because my heart was beating. And I was aware of this, and I was told this when I was up there in the portal. So, oh, yeah, your energy body and your physical body and your soul is there where it has to be. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. But your consciousness is not confined to the material realm. So it can travel. It can astral travel, as you said. It can be anywhere it wants to, and if you learn how to do it. And so, for example, yes, I don't typically consciously will myself to astral travel. First of all, understand that my view is that psychic abilities and psychic powers are material experiences, and they only confine you to the material realm. So they're not spiritual. Spiritual is God. That's it. God and soul. That's it. Everything else is material. There's higher octaves and elevations of it, for sure. Less tangible, less matter, but they're still part of the material phenomena. And so I think you and I seem to completely agree that it's your chitta, your consciousness, that projects outward and leaves your body, but your soul is still within your body. But you don't need your soul to think. Your mind, your chitta is what thinks. Your soul is just your essence. It's beautiful and it's divine. We can't relate. We can't conceptualize that. It's what they say in Sanskrit, ansh. Ansh means fraction. And it's an ansh of God. So God is divine, and the soul is an ansh, a fraction of the divine. So it is equal and synonymous with God, one with God already, but it is a fraction of it. God is the whole thing, and the soul, each soul, is ansh of it.
Exactly. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've said this time and time again because I people, I think maybe some people misinterpret what I'm saying. because we are fractions. You're talking about fractions. We're fractions of, if you want to call it God, source, whatever you want to call it. We're fractions of the oneness of
Yes.
everything, you know? So that's what I was going to ask you, like if you thought, but then you answered the question as I was asking you. You feel psychic. Anyways, because I was going to ask you, like, what do you think about the concept of us being little fractions of God, you know, or little pieces of God's
Well, and
consciousness?
again, we look to the East, the Eastern spirituality, which is a more open system. And so the Eastern spiritualists, the acharyas, the Jagat gurus, the Juru gurus, the masters, the acharyas, they've all been saying the eternal truths. Again, I understand that the Sanskrit text, the Vedas, Upanishads, etc., that true religion, the name of that religion is called Sanatan Dharma, not Hinduism. And Sanatan means eternal, and Dharma means truth. So it's truly called the eternal truth, and they all come from that. And so I look to those often for their revelations, their insights. And this is what they describe, is that your soul is already one with and part of God, but you can't experience it because your mind is not. Your soul already is. And so all of the yogis and masters and gurus that would teach it, like the Buddha, that you can become one with and become liberated from material phenomena, become one with and merge with God, that's absolutely true. But when you become enlightened, like the Buddha, your mind terminates. So you have no awareness of your soul merging with God anymore. Your soul is already one with God, but when your body is no longer there and you're liberated from the material phenomena, your soul merges with God eternally. The problem is you have no awareness of it. And I don't know about you, John, but I've lived for an eternity. It's been a bitch. I want to feel the bliss. I want to not just be one with God. I want to be aware of it. And when I was within the portal and as a human being, since I have a mind, I want to retain it. So there's two main paths of spiritual illumination, spiritual perfection: enlightenment, liberation, moksha, they call it, which is when your soul is liberated from material phenomena, but your mind is terminated. So you have no awareness. The other one is God realization. That's bhakti. So there's mukti and there's bhakti. And bhakti is when your mind, your soul is liberated from material phenomena, but your mind becomes divinized so that you experience God and the bliss and the love and the divinity. And I like that term the best myself, divinity. I just like to refer to it as the divine source, the divinity. When I was in the portal, did I want to come back? You talk to any NDE, they almost all say, hell no, I didn't want to come back. I was convinced to come back because I had work to do. Yeah, that's the nice way the Akasha gauges, they're saying like, yeah, you don't really have a choice. We're making it seem like a choice so that you go back motivated, but you don't have a choice. You got karmas, and karmas bind to the material phenomena. As long as you got karmas, you got to go back. But they make you feel that because then you have more motivation. And so I didn't really want to go back either. But bottom line is, I wasn't qualified for God realization yet. And I didn't care what was going to happen with me or for me or to me, so long as it pleased my divine source of love. Suffer, celebrate, whatever she wants, whatever it is. Turns out it was a lot of suffering.
Yeah.
There's a long time of that. It's a whole lot better now.
I see that. Yeah.
So yeah, the past life thing, again, I see them all the time. I keep the volume way down. Sometimes every once in a while, it'll just like pop out. And that's when I'm kind of being encouraged, you could say, to let people know. And it's usually just to help them gain more confidence in spiritual things so that they develop more mystically and spiritually on their own. It's not about fortune telling and predictions, and it's not about that kind of thing at all. There's always the only true dharma is spiritual dharma, dharma being truth. The only true dharma is sadhana, is what you do to develop and progress spiritually. So that's the only truth that I want to share with people. The only visions that I want to do is anything that I see, I want to put it in the context of how this can help them progress on their spiritual journey.
For those of us that, get premonitions, Do you have a way of explaining how this happens to us while we're living this experience?
Yeah. Again, as you already mentioned, John, reality, as we know with string theory, is multidimensional, and they're all happening all at once. And yes, your lifetimes, identities, dimensions of the universe, there are many of them, there are infinite layers of them. They're all happening all at once. They're all superimposed on each other. And so when you have psychic sanskars is the Sanskrit term for your tendencies and your leftover abilities from prior lifetimes, from prior work, and you're developing in this life too. So the intuitive ability with predictions, etc., it's like a muscle memory. You develop this skill in prior life work, and it's carried over, and you have this natural ability. Some people are psychic, and some people aren't. And so it's going to happen spontaneously, all on its own. That doesn't mean it's okay to use it. It's only thing that's relevant is if and when it can pertain to yours or someone's soul journey to progress spiritually. And so we are all, with medium and intuitive abilities, going to get these things spontaneously, whether we look for them or not. And I get them all the time. They just pop in, like a video, like I see them. And I'm like, I don't know, but what do I care about the car next to me at the traffic light that this woman is embezzling from her company and this guy's cheating on his wife? What do I care? It's none of my business. I don't care. I'm not there to save them. And so I see this kind of stuff all the time, but I turn away from it because it's not my business. And it's has nothing to do with the soul journey. So the picking up on these signals and visions is rather random. It's kind of like when you're driving in your car, I mean, whichever you get on the radio, it just happens to be whatever transmission you're in tune with, you know? And so the discipline is, what do I want to tune into and why? For me, I keep the volume way down on all those things, and I turn them off and I shove them aside. They're none of my business. And occasionally when some people seek me out for readings and intuitive things, again, when people secure readings for me, which I'm doing 2 or 3 a day, they secure readings and they're very profound, but they're not intuitive predictions. My readings are very in depth, and they're there to help you grow and learn and develop spiritually, to do your sadhana, to be able to learn how to practice your spirituality, your meditations, your prayers, your conscious work, not just what's going to happen if you're going to win the lottery or not, but what you can do to develop spiritually. And so, again, the only true Dharma is spiritual Dharma. And so what I recommend, and I know this is going to find a lot of people may not take this too as well, but unplug from these psychic phenomena. It's part of the material phenomena. It's not spiritual. It's part of the material phenomena. It's just on the subtle layers, like the energy body. It's still part of the material realm. It's just subtle. And turn away from that and apply that same thought and energy to your spiritual connection to the Godhead, to the divinity, to serve that in any way, and continue to do devotional meditations. We're not saviors. We're all stupid humans. We're not capable of saving each other, really. Yet you could and should do good. And I try to apply my service to help people as much as I can, always have, as a counselor and now as an intuitive, and both. But it's a tremendous responsibility. And most people, not most, let me rephrase that. That's incorrect. Many people with intuitive and psychic abilities, they don't ever train how to use them properly. They don't train out what they mean. And that's an abuse of the ability. And I can't tell you how many people, especially in the NDE community, that I've met, and I mentioned this in my book because it hurts. People that wake up from an NDE and suddenly they have these carried over intuitive abilities from their NDE, because you bring back stuff from when you're in the portal, when you're in all there, it kind of carries over, and yet they don't do anything to train with it. They don't do anything to learn it. They don't do anything to study it. They just start using it. And that's irresponsible. So that'd be like if I went and saw a movie on surgery, on operations or EMT work, and just went and started saving people. No, I got to go to school. I got to train. I can't just be inspired and then suddenly feel like I can go pick up a scalpel and start doing work. And
Of
so
course, some do, though. I mean, some do, NDEs that are mediums will go through training, of course, not to say that they don't, but yeah.
they many do, and that's what I encourage, and I love that. I love it when they do that. Yes, when they
Yeah.
they become junkies. They love the knowledge of it, and that's what I encourage everybody to do. Is just that: train it, learn it. Just don't just use it. Train it, learn it, build a connection and a relationship with it. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So you're currently making, or at least partly making, a living out of being a medium, or no?
Well, I don't like. I wouldn't use the term medium. I've always
Okay, intuitive. Let's say.
Yeah, no. I was, until I recently retired from my private practice. I was a behavioral counselor, a specialist, and I was always using my intuition to help guide people to heal and get better and progress in life, because I saw things that really weren't based on our discussions. I was always intuitive, and so the difference is, again, I now apply mystical modalities, the readings and blueprints, insights that are a synthesis of numerology. I'm a Pythagorean numerologist and always have been. Astrology, tarot, Kabbalah, and the I Ching, and the I Ching's Kabbalah's Tree of Life, and the I Ching 64 hexagrams. And so this is a synthesized system. And again, a lot of intuition is involved. As I did a reading this morning, I am indeed. I'm looking at so I kind of look at the mystical modalities as I'm more like a mystical weather forecaster. I'm telling you what's coming. I'm telling you what kind of energies, what kind of flows, what kind of things can work with. So if you want to go with the wind at your back or with the wind in your face, I'm telling you how to turn, when to turn right, when to turn, and what will happen when you do. What kind of things you can experience, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, and how to develop spiritually, not to solve your material problems.
What about tapping into or communicating with other souls? Does anybody come to you for that?
They do, and I don't participate.
Okay.
I'm not saying, now, again, occasionally it becomes very prevalent. Occasionally, very rarely, but occasionally, I will feel, even before I meet somebody trying to get in touch with somebody that I haven't even met yet. Then when I meet, I'm like, oh boy. Okay, so I am being the medium, you could say. I'm being that conduit. And I will fulfill that role because that's what I'm called on to do. But again, if people hire me to do like the seance, kind of with the dead and all that, no, that's not part of my services. I'm here. So I do also offer readings for people that have passed on. But this is to give you comfort and to give you some insight as to where they've progressed to, what kind of experience that they're having at their death event and ongoing. And so it's more a way of accepting and moving on for your own progress. And so again, I'm always encouraging people to use these insights and readings and modalities to learn how to improve and work harder at their own spiritual journey and practices. Again, sadhana is the Sanskrit term for spiritual practice. When I go to my temple, I sit in my meditation room, and I do my bhakti chanting, and I meditate in silence. And when I go to bed at night, whatever I'm doing, this is my sadhana. And they say in the Vedas, one of my favorite quotes from Be Here Now from Ram Dass, actually. He quotes it. And it is, in the beginning, you do your sadhana. And in the end, sadhana is all you do.
And is all there is.
That is all there is.
Is that a copy, some artwork of your latest book in the background there?
Yeah. So thank you for asking. So we have here is the endecagram itself, an 11-point star. Numerologically, my life lesson, my life purpose is an 11, 5611. So I kept seeing that. It's called a endecagram. What you have here is you have 12 lotus petals that represent the Anahata chakra of the heart. You have the violet Sahasrara chakra aura surrounding it as a ring of protection. The orange rings of protection represent my guru, because the acharyas always wear the robes of orange. So what you may not be able to see very well is in the very center of this, I just kept going. In the very center of this, you'll see the bindi dot. That's where we meditate on, right? When we're doing those kind of meditations. And there's this light coming out of it. What you may not see through so clearly on the camera, I don't know if you can see it, in the very center ring, there's a serpent called an Ouroboros, the serpent that's eating its own tail, that represents infinity and eternal life. And not just eternal life, but reincarnation, life after life.
It is beautiful, though.
Thank you.
Honestly, yeah,
So
I
yeah,
love
I
it.
was really, I mean, I use it to meditate on. So sometimes I'm sitting with my morning coffee and I'm sitting, I'm like, wow, it really captivates me. The reason this book is big because it isn't just a story. And I've never felt that the story is about me. It's about the Anch. It's about a soul's experience. And so what this started out as was just a memoir to document my death experience. But the only way I could explain what I was experiencing and going through for these 7, 8, 9 years that I was experiencing it was by, I mean, I would write to them and say, well, how can anybody understand if I don't explain to them what the context is in Sanskrit and what the context is spiritually? They can't understand that. So I had to explain it. And I'm like, okay, well, now they're getting an education on spirituality. So now it became both. And so that's how it evolved.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a really
Thanks
wonderful
for inviting
experience.
me, John. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Same here. Likewise. Thank you so much.